Hey, what up, YouTube? How are you doing, my lovely viewers? It's good that you're watching this again. I wish I could see you as well, but unfortunately I can't. But thank you ever so much for my subscribers, which I now have 67 of you. So thank you ever so much for your continued subscription. It means a huge amount to me. Massive appreciations. And it's my birthday up and coming as well, as a few of you know, and I'm going to be taking a bit of a trip soon. And anyway, I've got my whiskey Auchentoshan Capita glass, which we will be using in a moment. I'm going to have some Bushmills. I need it. And we're just going to crack on now and get on with the video. And we're going to be discussing, as I'm sure you can see here, we're going to be looking at RFID. I don't know if you're going to be able to see my ugly face. And yes, we've got some cards here. We've got some other bits and pieces. All of this we'll have a cursory look at in a minute. Let's just grab that, because this is what we need now. We need bang the top off of that, boink that out of there, get rid of that, boink, there we go. Let's just have a little single measure of this. I'll try not to just launch this everywhere. Alright, okay. Ah, that's better. Much better when you're drinking whiskey out of a real glass, unlike what I was drinking it out of before. Absolutely. Yum, 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 yum. Yum, 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 yum. That's what we like. Right, okay. Waffle, waffle. Let me just get somewhere where I can plonk that down there, I suppose. And let's get to what we were going to get to. Let's chuck my whiskey away, because I don't want to kill that. I'll need that anyway for my travels soon. Alright, RFID, let's get cracking. Alright, so we've got some bits and pieces here. Let's have a look at what we've got. Alright, so we've got a travel card here. These can come in all sorts of varieties, actually. In London, which is one of the busiest metro or underground, you Americans and a lot of Europeans will know it as a metro. For you guys out in Hong Kong and China, you'd know it as an MTR, which is Mass Transit Railway. Here we either call it the Underground or the Tube. It's essentially, just shuttle trains that run in tubes under the ground, hence why it's the London Underground. And that's operated by TEFL, or TFL, Transport for London, but they also operate buses as well, and you can get an Oyster card. This is not an Oyster card. This is actually a Travel Master card from a company called Stagecoach. Now, all you guys out in the continental US would probably know Stagecoach, because something tells me they work there. I think they do, but these actually will work with First. Here in the UK, I think that's First Arriva. I might be wrong on that, but anyway, it's a travel card. They're all pretty much the same. Whether it be Oyster, whatever, whether it be this, they're all going to be pretty much working on NFC or Rfid. Well, to be actually a bit more specific about this, we need to stop really calling it RFID and NFC. We're going to know it by, its true name, which is ISO 14443, and which is ISO 14443AB, or A or B, or ISO 15693. We'll cover the differences in these in probably another video. I just want to explain to you the basics. So, whether it be loyalty cards, transport tokens, those would pretty much come into a category pretty much on their own, or access cards. These are just access cards. They're access to a segment or to an area with privilege. In this case, it's transport network. Hotels, I suppose, could come into this as well. It's just an access device. That's all. Right. So you have credentials there to use the transport network, essentially. Right. Hotel keys could look something like this. That's a T5577. That works on a slightly different frequency, which we'll cover in another video. CUID cards as well, we've got those. And the M1 type, I think that's MyFair, I do believe. I'm not sure. That's the S50, 1356 megahertz again. This is high frequency. And we've got the UID card here as well. So user identification, that will just load up a bunch of user identification numbers. Pretty sure of it. Again, proximity card type thing. Also what you would mainly find in hotels. Could be similar to that, but with probably a bit less data on there. So those are those kind of types of cards. As we said, though, we've got the 5577. Although we're not discussing that here, per se, purely because I think that might be lower frequency. I'm not quite sure. Not really done anything with it. They are still out there in the wild, and there's a lot of these legacy systems out there, but it runs on a slightly different frequency than what I'm natively working with. But for the purposes of a demonstration, we'll just flip that over. And we'll keep it here anyway, and so I don't lose them. Moving on, and we've got a token here. You've seen these fobs. Waving it around up here, which is off camera, which is clever. I've not even had that much whiskey yet, but I'll be better off waving the whiskey around. Makes more sense. So, these fobs, you would have seen these before. I'm not showing you my car keys anyway, because I don't want you guys knowing what bloody car I drive. That comes under the whole basis of social engineering and people then knowing a bit too much. So, yeah, I'm not showing you that. So I've got a stand in here. And these kind of fobs, you can find them on cars. You find these in a lot of places, actually. Badges for work. Sometimes if you work in retail or sales, you'll often find them there as well. For what's known as POS terminals or POS. Not piece of shit, it's point of sales. Otherwise known as tilling systems or merchant terminals. The way these work is if you've got groups of staff, and sometimes they can have these swipe cards, sometimes they can be like cards like this, but sometimes, particularly in bars where you need to be doing things quickly, you would have these on a belt loop or on an extender, and you would touch them onto a terminal, and that would give you user access under a certain name. That's what those are for. Alright, so it'd be a sort of for a basic function like that, all right, where you'd be assigned a simple number. All right, so all it needs to do is just acknowledge a certain number on the system, probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. All right, so nothing huge is going to be stored on that. Cars, however, would. They'll probably have some encryption on there, at least with the older type, they would have. Cars now have moved on a little bit because they also have radio transponders in them now as well. So certainly for the older type of vehicle, I know that they were a thing in the Renault Megane. I had one, you know, the car, horrible ass sticking out on it. Hairdresser's car, basically, only a lot uglier. I'll call it a Karen car. It's just, without being facetious to Karens. Alright, so if you're named Karen, I'm not actually taking the mickey out of you. It's a meme. Yes, you know, the kind of girl that always wants to see the manager, or who is the manager. In cases where I know Karens that are managers, I'm not taking the mickey out of you. It's a meme. It's been on the internet long before I mentioned it. So, but, yeah, that's the sort of thing there anyway. So, yeah, tilling systems, or as we know, point of sales terminals, you find them. Also in kind of warehouses, you'd run into that, but you'd also find these things there as well. All right. Other types of NFC devices that you'll often run into, and yes, we've covered these over with red tape, because I don't really want you lot sending money to any princes somewhere, or you being any ponces. So we've taped everything off so you can't see credentials. And so you've got a Barclay card. Barclays operate here in the UK anyway. I think they're pretty much all over the place. Then we've got Halifax and, of course, American Express. Kudos to these guys. Awesome loyalty program. If you want in on that, I can refer you. So if you get an application in and you get approved, we'll get points. Fantastic card. It's not a credit card. It's a charge card. These are not credit cards. They're debit cards. And that's how that is. But we'll discuss that in some other time. Then, of course, other NFC devices we have these, and you would have probably seen these before. These are just a mobile form of those, and I'm sure you would have actually seen these. Yes, these are these contactless card reader terminals. You know the ones where you could either stick your card in the bottom, or in this case you can also swipe them, which we're not going to do for obvious reasons, or with this you can actually use it as contactless. And with that they would, with that you've got a second reader here. Well, that one is actually for the merchant, so that would be over there. This is the one that you would interact with, so you could either scan your card, which, yeah, would be, that was the arrow, so you could do that, which is that way anyway, or you could use chip and pin, but we're talking about NFC, so you just touch that on there, you would hear a beep, and then either your transaction is accepted or declined. Now, other devices we've got, you can find NFC on your phones as well. So a lot of phones, some laptops have it. It's becoming increasingly common now in laptops and netbooks. So you can find it there. Tablets as well. I mostly use the Nexus 7s. Well, because I'm a hacker, so a hacker would. They're good tablets for that. I've also got other mobile phones and other devices I would use for that as well. That's not all, because we have other NFC devices as well, such as this one. And this there is a sniffing, reading and cloning of RFID tag tool. And in here, well, that's where those white cards came from. So you'd have a USB cable and obviously the tool itself. Let's just get that out of the way. And there it is. This is brand new. So obviously there we are. There's the coil there. That coil there is for the lower frequency side for 125K, and the other side there is for your high frequency, and that's the Proxmark 3 Easy. Silica gel doesn't really do anything, that's just a liquid desiccant. That's what came in the box. Don't eat it, I meant to throw it away. I'm just going to keep that in there until we're ready to use it. Okay, there's some basic tools. Now, there are other things that we have got as well. I might as well show you them. Because NFC has been around and Rfid has been around for a fair few years. In fact, quite a lot of years as it goes. And that stemmed from the livestock industry initially and from microchipping of pets, believe it or not. Yeah, you would have seen it where good old tonsils and good old spleens the cat. They're good names for cat. Most people would call their cat something like buttons or pebbles or tiddles, which are things. Yeah, but spleens are things as well, and kidneys and tonsils are things, but you never really hear anyone call their cat spleens or tonsils, unless, of course, your name is Gray. And check out his channel as well. He's a funny guy. Gray still plays. He's funny. He's legend. And yeah, have a look at his channel when it mentions Spleens the cat. So funny. And that cat is super cute and cool, even if it is derping out a bit. But yeah, basically, sorry about digression, that's where RFID was mainly used. It was in the sort of microchipping of pets and livestock. And it just sort of went from there. You know, when you take a reader and scan the scruff and neck of your cat or dog, you know, a vet would, or if somebody found it, then they'll be able to alert you and say, oh yeah, look, we found the cat, or we found your dog, you want to come and collect it. Or if somebody tried to steal your animal and took it to a vet, then the vet would scan it and say, hang on a minute, this isn't your animal. Right, so that's where it mostly came from, and then obviously with humans we've adapted to use it in this field as well. Now, in the links, I'm also going to link to another site called st.com, which are these guys here. And in fact, actually, I'm just wondering if, do we do this on the main computer? I'm wondering. We might do. Let's see. No, I don't want to extract that. I'll just explore that idea. Get off. God, why didn't I just use the external mouse on this? Okay, Google Chrome. I bet you're going to get sick of seeing the back of my head in a minute. Oh, it's not even connected to the internet. Alright, sod it. We'll just do it this way then. We can just zoom in anyway, so that's fine. I'll read it to you. In fact, you might even be able to see it, actually. That's better. I think you can see it now. But I'll leave the links to this in the description bar below. But we're going to try and explain a lot of this now. Now, I'm not affiliated with these guys, so I'm not marketing them in any way. This is just one of many, many websites that are out there that explain this stuff, but it's not quite as user-friendly for the average person. This is more going to be aimed at people that already have a knowledge with this kind of stuff, so people like myself, and to some degree people a little bit less actually, but whatever, you know, whatever goes. So anyway, we're looking at the ST25 NFC /RFID tags and readers. We're not really worried about the product family. You can go and look at that. We're going to focus on the next part, the next paragraph down. So it says, currently found in contactless payment, access control and public transport ticketing systems. NFC technology is a convenient, always-on, low-power, short-range wireless link that's driving the growth for convenient pairing, diagnostic readout, data tracking, parameter setting use cases in consumer, industrial, automotive and medical applications. Then they're going into a little bit of a sales tangent there about their 10-year program, whatever, we're not really bothered, we're not marketing them. So the ST25 series of NFC on Rfid tags feature 1356 HF interface, which, as we already spoke, is the 1356 megahertz interface. It's the frequency of which they're running on. As we already said earlier on, it's ISO 14443AB compliant, ISO 15693, which is the NFC forum compliance. So anything on ISO forums, well, that's basically a compliancy, and to obviously get the ISO accreditations, you have to obviously meet those compliances. And those would be given on the forum, and that comes down to your overall design. Right, so from 512-bit to 64 kilobit memory, so 64K is 64,000 bits there. Now, up to 32-bit counter with anti-tearing. What the anti-tearing just basically means there is to stop data from, physically as it's being written or copied from being torn away and damaging a tag if you put that on too soon or take it off. I think that's my understanding of it. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what that might be. In a field detect output, that's pretty much standard across the board, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. I can show you, in fact we can do that now, just by using our mobile phone. Field detect output, well, basically if you get any detection on a tag, you'll get something that looks like this, or sounds. You probably didn't hear that. Yeah, so we'll just do that again. Yes, it beeps when you come into range of a card, so basically that. OTP bytes means one-time programmable. We're going to have a look at that in a minute as well. Obviously they're saying they're shipping this with software and evaluation tools. That might be a good idea, or you might end up with problems. It'd be pointless buying something like this, such as like what we have here, if you didn't have any of the tools to go with it. Now, with this kind of stuff though, it's already assumed that you know what you're doing, hence why if you've got things like Arduino, which for the record, this is dated in 2012, there's your NFC shield on there, it's dated for 2012, yeah, 12/10/2012. So the technology on Arduino has been out there for a long, long time. That's obviously for legacy. Right, so let's get our phone back in there. Okay, one-time programmable, we've covered that. Right, antenna design tool. Now, antennas, we'll cover that in a whole other video anyway. Darren nearly kicked the tripod over. Right. Then the ST25D series is essentially the same sort of thing anyway. We're not really going to go into that at this point because there's not really much else for the purposes of this video that we need to look at the minute, although at some point we will. We've already covered the interface, we've already covered the compliance, but the I2C interface, we'll look at that at some point. 2 kilobit to 64,000 bit memory, so 2000 bit to 64K, so it's double we had before, so this is the updated form of it. Energy harvesting, we'll look at all this later on with your configurable output signals as well. Fast transfer mode, yes, because it's generally quicker now anyway. We'll cover all of that at a later. And then you've got another frequency, is this? Yeah, so 1356 megahertz high frequency and the 840 by 960 megahertz ultra high frequency. In this, you'll have a few other ISO standards, and again, we'll look at that at another date as well at some point. So, alongside the 1444.3A and B, you would also have, as we said before, the 1569.3, but you would also have ISO 18092 and ISO 18000 and ISO 29143. Is that the Phonica NFC forum, EMVCO and PBOC? Pardon me. EMV is going to be Eurocard, MasterCard and Visa, I think. Pretty sure that's what EMV is. And that's going to be in your payment systems. For the record, these are now known as tokens. So any RFID card or bank card or credit card or anything like that is technically, for the purposes of this, known as a token. And basically, just on a side note, when you come to a reader and you interface with it, that's known as dipping your token. Right? So you're actually presenting your token and you're using that to interface. So we are. Just have a quick belt on the inhaler and we'll move on. Yeah, it's just then going into more of their other stuff as well. Operating in the 1356 MHz RFID HF band, the ST25 NFC tags, dynamic tags comply with 1444.3 type A and B and 1569.3 ISO and NFC forum standards, and offer a range of EEPROM memory sizes from 512-bit to 64K-bit. That's basically that, and that's the package of what that processor actually, well, not processor, but the actual chip looks like. And then there's some other device there, and I've not quite been able to identify that yet. It looks similar to Proxmark, but then again, that actually looks awfully similar to what we have here, which could be Arduino based, but it could even be Raspberry Pi based, all of which we have capabilities of working with. And actually, we've got another one. We've got an Asus Tinkerboard, should we wish to use one of those instead. So if we want to go into the deeper end of hacking, and we really want to throw ourselves in at the deep end, then we can. I'm gonna keep drinking that whiskey and let myself chooch until I charge. Right, and that's just about it from their website. So that's st.com. Right, what are we? We're about half an hour in. Let's go and have a look now at some potential scenarios for this. We're not going to do any experiments today, though. I'm going to do that another day. You don't need to see that. And aren't I clever? When I actually smoke as well as having asthma, I am a rather clever individual. Some may say I have a death wish, but yeah, well, I don't know about that. I am known for doing some pretty outrageous things. I need to get that tool out. Okay, so let's have a look now at some real world potential applications. We'll come back to the bank cards probably a little bit later, or maybe in another video on how they work. But let's just try and keep this simple so most of you will be able to understand sort of at a level what's going on here. All right. Now again, we're not going to go into the encryption side of this a great deal. I don't really think that's necessary at the minute, because it's just going to confuse a bunch of people, and we don't really want to do that. All right. For all of you guys who don't really know how this stuff works, this is the whole point about trying to explain this. All right, because a lot of people, they see the technology and they're mesmerized by how it actually works. They don't understand what's going on. All right, and you know, you'll see a bunch of people then end up using RFID wallets on cards and things like that. Yeah, sometimes that's okay to do that, but what you've got to understand is there's a lot of other things that go on behind the scenes. Again, with the bank cards, we'll explain them at a later date. Right. Okay, so here we have just a straight RFID reader. These come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and for all types of purposes, as we already explained. There's payment terminal. You can get them that are portable. We've already covered this. All right. We're just going to focus on this because it's nice and easy. As you can see, it's just a straight RFID reader. Here we're going to have 4 cards, as you can see. Let's move these over a bit. And for the purpose of this, all right, we've got one manager. Even though this is a transport card, forget that. Right? Forget the idea that, where is it, the T5577 doesn't work. We already know that. Whatever. Right? And forget that the idea that this is a sales thing or whatever. That's a guest. This is a manager. And these are individual lower level workers. This is how this works. Right. I'm going to assign myself as the CEO, or the boss. Our guest, in this case, would be Karen. She's our guest. And we have our various employees. All right. So I arrive to work early. All right. Obviously, because I'm the boss, I've got to oversee the opening up. Dink, I present my card. The reader's accepted it. It knows the credentials on the card because obviously this would be attached to some computer system, which we don't need to go into. That's just a back-end job at there. So presenting this, the software, would know who I am because it would be pre-programmed on a computer. The reader would send the information to computer. Computer would say, yes, you're good to go, welcome manager. So then obviously that's my clocking in done. I then go off into whatever area I'm in. I can open all doors within the building. Well, because I'm more than a manager, I'm the CEO. So yeah, I own basically the whole building. I have root access, so for that purpose, I don't need any privilege escalation because I already have that. Every door I can enter and exit. So it's put me here. I'm now in the server room doing what I should be doing. Now our staff start to arrive. First one badges in. Now, this staff member wants to come and see me in the server room for something, goes up to another reader and tries to badge and can't get in. That's because when we assign each card, we assign credentials for that and a certain privilege level. Now, our lower level workers, even though I love them dearly, as I treat everyone equally, and I do look after them and I always pay my workers fairly, it's not practical to have them wandering around in server rooms because bad things can happen. There are certain things at a back-end level just have to be kept locked away. So, what we do is we allocate all of our workers a level 1 card. So, worker 1 goes off to their terminal, does whatever they're doing. Second worker's coming in, chimes in. Third worker in, and fourth in. Now this particular day, what we've got is I've got a guest, and Karen wants to come in. So she comes into the building. She doesn't have a badge on her because she doesn't work for me. So she's booked an appointment with me. I verified it. So she'll go to security desk, obviously because you would have security, and they would obviously, or reception, she'll present herself at reception, say, right, okay, well, I'm here to see Totally Amazing. Well, I was actually here to see McDonald, old McDonald. He's the EIEIO, but he wasn't available, so I have to see the CEO, which is me. Awesome. Because she obviously wants to complain and get a job. All right, fine. Whatever goes. So, she presents herself to reception. Reception will verify through security. That comes back as okay. They issue her a visitor's badge. Now, how that works will depend on the particular building. Now, with the visitor's badge, I don't want her having access to these two people here, right? They might well be level 1. This might be level 2 or level 3, depending. But our guest doesn't have any need to be going anywhere near level 1. All right, the visitor's purpose was to come and see me and do some checking over various other levels. Now, the good thing is with this, when we said it's OTP, it's one-time programmable. And that's the same for all of these cards. So what we can do is, myself in the server room or in my office, I might decide, well, I love my workers even more, and it's about time I give them a promotion. With the promotion comes extra responsibilities. So our two here at level 1, I can now assign them to level 2. Now, we said it's one-time programmable, right? So this is how this works. I have access to the computer system. That's back office. All right. So what do? Well, I just simply reassign these cards on the system. I don't need to say to our first two workers, I need your card to reprogram it. Don't need to, because it's done live on the system. The reader is connected to obviously your back office, where all of your door locking and your timing is done. So now my workers have been promoted to level 2 here. And these guys might need level 3 or 4, depending. Or even in the case that they get demoted, if one's been bad, then I can just basically demote them or reassign like that. That's what it means by one-time, OTP, one-time programming. So I don't need to write the same card multiple times. This is the advantage that they have over conventional door locks. Because with door locks, basically you would have to key each person, obviously, with a physical key. and you would then have to either recall keys and then redistribute accordingly. And if one person loses a key, then you have to reissue everyone a whole new key and then change a lock. That's a physical lock, physical keys. And yeah, that can become a problem. At least in this case, we don't have to do that. If somebody, let's say worker 3, lost their card, well, no problem. I'll just deactivate it on the system, because each card would have a unique identifying number. Then I'll just simply order a new card or whatever, or I would have spares, then reprogram that card, reassign it, one-time deal, and the new user number would be on the system. Same thing if worker number 2 fell over outside of work, or they wouldn't be hopefully falling over in my business, because that would be bad. So they fell over, or the card got damaged. Maybe they were out on a works function and broke the card. Maybe it was in a wallet, they sat on it and snapped it. Again, no problem. The card is defunct, but I'll just simply write another card. There you go. Ding. There you are, worker 2. There's your card. Now, worker number 4, in this case, has been really bad, and as such can no longer work for me. Unfortunately, these things have a habit of happening, in which case worker 4's done something to get dismissed, done something very serious, tries to come in the next day. Beep beep, sorry, you can't come in. Security come over and say, yeah, that's because you're fired. Right? You've been really bad, or whatever. But again, I like my workers, and I would think that I've hired them innocently. So it's all been a huge misunderstanding. No problem. You can now tap back in. You've got your job back. Right? Everyone needs a job, and it's about being reasonable, should reason allow it. Awesome. Right. Now, again, with the visitor's badge, with that, we've already covered. At the end of the visit, drop that back into security. It's the same thing as like you would in a hotel. And then that's just, it would still be allowed. Obviously, the card can, or in this case, badge can still be used on the system. But this would just go into secure storage. Probably at a location that I would have control. Either myself or security, or both, would have that. So these would be kept in a lockable cabinet. Now, what if somebody was, aside of lose the card, there is a potential downside to this, and this is what we're going to look at now. What if, let's just say, worker number 3, in fact, no, let's use worker number 1, because 3's been having a bit of a run, and 4's just got the job back. 2's boring. Worker number 1 now has gone out. And here's where a potential problem can arise, and I want to show you this. Right. Now, we said that the UID is not programmable, right? Did I? Well, throw that out the window. There is a case where user IDs can be cloned if you've got the right tool. Something that looks like that, right? Sniffing, reading and cloning of RFID tags. So, let's just say then we're all out on a works do. And staff number 1 gets pally with somebody, or worse still, if worker number 1's a woman, she left her handbag open, or the card was dangling at the side of her bag like some people do, or, they've just put their wallet down for a second or whatever. Well, then what happens if somebody comes along with one of these tools and says, right, okay, I'm going to copy that card. Worker number one doesn't realise, and it literally only takes that to copy it. Just a second. Worker number one is completely oblivious to the fact now that data's been copied. So what then? Well, then a hacker can come along, potentially, let's just say with the Amex card, let's just pretend that's another card. Write the data to this card. Now, what you've got is a copied card, a clone of that. So basically a rogue card on the network. Or rather on essentially our accepted network for our staff. So theoretically then, if the hacker knows where that member of staff works, a hacker could then just go up and badge in, right? Right, they could. Now the interesting thing here is in that case, they would only have access to whatever permission was set on that card. So if it was only level 1 access, then the hacker would only have level 1 access. But things do get a bit sinister. What if you've got then an overzealous, probably not the right word, or over-inquisitive member of staff who then decided to use me as a focal point for their activity? Well, what then? Well, the answer would be simple, wouldn't it? You would attempt to get me drunk one night, on a staff's do. You would try and find some way of carrying a proxmark or something similar. Good luck with that. And then you would essentially do the same thing. You would clone. I'm not going to pull that back out again. So you would get access to the card, you'd clone it for just a second, and then you would write to your copied card. Then theoretically now what you have is an underprivileged member of an employee. Now that would essentially have privilege escalation. So that would at that point be known as a privilege escalation attack, and this device then would be a privilege escalation device at that point. More likely that's just going to be an access device anyway. But to gain a foothold in a business and gain access and then raise your privileges, in hacking, that's kind of what you would do. Now, there is ways of actually safeguarding that anyway. And that is, at the end of shift, your staff simply hand these into reception or into security end of shift. So these staff are not taking their cards with them. Then each time they come into work, every morning or whatever you're doing, you just basically hand over your ID, and then it can be verified on the system. That would essentially kind of foil that attack, or you would use encrypted cards. Another way that you could potentially do this as well is you could even theoretically take the contactless library card. And this is an interesting philosophy, actually, because if somebody had found a wallet, then the idea with that, or, what looks like a travel card, but it might have your work credentials on it. So let's just then pretend that that I'm number two. Number two could do something genius. It's got one of these cloner reader tools, copies his work credentials, and then writes his credentials onto a travel pass. There is a potential of doing that. like we said. And that would be genius, because that in a way is a form of social engineering, because, and this is where things are interesting, because if somebody then found a wallet, they're not automatically going to know what that is, are they? They'll just assume that the data blocks on there are either a travel card or a fucking library card or some loyalty card thing. And they'll probably, and shuck it. Even if somebody had access to one of these devices, unless they know what reader that goes to, they're probably not going to yield anything useful off of it. Unless, of course, the reader was set up to acknowledge that particular that coding from that. Because, with these, you can store quite a lot of data on these cards anyway to be read by the reader. Whatever you've got on the card will be read. It's as simple as that. So that's going to come down to a lot of your database design. This was a big concern a few years ago with regards to these. And this is where we're going to just briefly talk now about an old vulnerability with regards to bank cards. Right. Financial cards now. So we're going to have a bit of a talk about these and then we'll wrap it up. Now what this was in the olden days, well, not quite the olden days, there's some out there that still like this. And I do believe systems in America still like this. I don't know about now, but I do believe they might be. And in other parts of the world, certainly in sub-Saharan Africa as well. Now what you could do is theoretically you could take a reader. Now bearing in mind you don't want to be doing this, because you could get yourself in a lot of trouble. At the end of the day, these are still property of the respective banks and financial institutions. They're not going to take kindly to people dicking around with their hardware. So I just want to mention this now. Don't. Because if you get caught doing it, you'll get the book thrown at you. I mean, like, do this if you want, don't do it if you don't want, whatever. I don't really care, man. Just don't get your dumb ass busted if you do this. For the record, I don't recommend you do. But there was an old way back in the day. Let's zoom out a bit, because I'm going to explain this now. I've just opened myself a nice cider and all. So I'm going to get my dumb ass face in the way of this now. In the olden days, what there was a way that you could, on certain legacy systems, I don't even know if you could still do this nowadays, but we'll probably have a look at it. You could read the card, and the information on it was often quite incredible, because what you would get is the 16-digit card number across the front. Sometimes you'd be lucky enough to get, or unlucky enough if it's your card that's being cloned, you would get it wouldn't be cloned, it's skimmed. And I'll get into why this is. You would get sometimes either the expiry date or the start date. And more than likely it would be the expiry date. The worst case if you got both. And on some of them, it would even give you your cardholder's name, which is quite frightening, actually. The only thing it wouldn't give you on the back, which is why I have these taped over, it wouldn't give you your CCV or CVV number, which is your card verification number. That's usually a 3-digit code. In the case of American Express, I've had to tape over it here because there's a 4-digit code as well. So you have 2 letters or another 2-factor identification with that. You'd have the 3 digits on the back and the 4 digits on the front with American Express. Slightly different, bit more secure. With the rest, it was 3 digits on the back. Interestingly enough, there are websites out there, and what people were doing is something called carding. So they would sneakily read your card, However, they needed to get the RFID information. I'll leave that to your imagination, but a common one was unscrupulous employees would hide something like this, um, you know, strap it to their leg, pretend to be a clumsy waiter and drop the card on the floor. As they pick the card up, they would touch it against their leg and scan it. Now, although they didn't get the 3-digit code on the back of the card, what they often got was the 16-digit number, the expiry date, the valid from date, and the account holder's name. And if they read through the data even more, they would even then, under extreme circumstances, and there was a huge fail on this a few years ago, where potentially you could even pull addresses and other things, other information, other kind of metadata as well. There was a big hoo-ha about it. And I think that's now been done away with. I think that's now been plugged. But the whole carding point is then you would take the data that you were able to get, go onto the internet and make a purchase. So that's where all the fucking hoo-ha was with it. And understandably, this is why people now are advised to use these RFID shielding wallets. I mean, you could just simply cover your cards in a layer of tinfoil. Or, better yet, just telephone the bank and just say to them, look, what I want you to do is send me out cards that are not RFID compliant. And I think there are several banks that will acknowledge that. I do believe Lloyd's will. I think Halifax do as well, actually. And Barclays do. Might even be Hang Seng Bank of China or HSBC. I think they might as well. I know, obviously, if you want the NFC capabilities stopped, you can do that. Just on a sort of side note, you'll know if you've got NFC capability because you'll have that logo there. Right? So it looks like 4 semicircles like that, right? And that's pretty much the universal symbol. Halifax have got it. And I'm going to cover my finger there with that. But even Amex have got it as well. So, basically, yeah, that's the symbol. If you see the symbol, then the card's enabled with it. But again, I wouldn't be hugely worried because, they'll only read for a few centimetres. We did it earlier on with the Galaxy S8, which is here. Let's just turn that on and show you the sort of distance we're on about. It's about the width of 2 fingers, I think. So let's have a quick look there. Yeah, on a width of 2 fingers, so probably around 5 to 10 centimetres or so is usually a distance, but there is potentially a way that you can increase that range by even a couple of metres. But again, that would require very, very, very specialist hardware to do that. And that's outside of the reach of a lot of people. The number of hackers out there, or should we say crackers, that are doing that, the chances are you're not going to encounter one of them unless you're really unlucky. Alright, or unless somebody skimmed you and specifically knows that you have access to high value cards and you're a target. That's the thing about it. But again, most of that sort of data now, the banks have already covered themselves with that. So that data now often isn't actually broadcast. And I have scanned my Amex before, and I've tried to look at the data on it, and all it does is it just gives me a membership number. So again, they thought of that. Actually, American Express have thought of that, and it only throws out a membership number, which is pretty much useless, actually. So without the card, you're really not doing anything. So again, that comes down to the drawback is if you lose the card. I've got potential solutions for that, and I need to actually get written permission from American Express at some point to see if I can start mucking around with that hardware and doing that. But there are ideas I've got that are up and coming next week. You might want to stay tuned for that. There'll be definitely a video coming out on this. But yeah, theoretically, you could copy it. You could. I mean, you've got data that's stored on there that potentially could work. But then you would have to find a way of breaking the encryption, which wouldn't be easy. And in any event, most of these card providers, certainly on the financial side, and this is where it's reassuring, they use specific chips that are EMV, as we said, which is EuroPay, MasterCard and Visa. They use specific dedicated internal chips that are encoded. So trying to get that data off is going to be really difficult. Again, then how are you going to get the chip out the card without destroying the chip? And you'd still have to get that out the card as well. And don't forget the antenna that's in there. I'll cover how those actually work at a later date anyway, but essentially you're going to have a flat coil in there. And the chips usually on these could be stored anywhere with a small wire attached on there. And essentially what happens is, just on a side note, if you touch that to a reader, what happens is it will induce an electrical current. It's basically an inductor. For any of you who know about induction induction hobs, it's that. Alright, so, induction cookers, same sort of principle. You're able to put electrical energy through a coil and it will induce a current. Just enough to power that chip. That's the idea of it. So with that, people, you all have a great weekend. I'm off to get this video uploaded. And then I've actually, because I've got a busy week coming up, and it's going to be pretty painful actually as well, I'll cover more about this. I've got to get this ready, because I need to get that and that to work with my computer. Right, I've got to get that to run, and that's going to take quite a while. So with that, people, I'm out of here. It's been good to see you all again anyway. Well, I say see you all, but it's probably, I don't, whatever. Good to see you, but not sort of see you. It's good to put out another video, and hopefully, yeah, you're going to like, comment, and continue to subscrizzle. I'm out of here, so I will catch you next time, and see you then.